David Bowie, there's been almost as much written and said about the different faces of Bowie, the different personas.
I take no responsibility at all, Kerry. How are you?
As there has been about the reinvention in your music. When you set out to build a career 40 years ago, did you already then have the kind of groundbreaking musical ambition that emerged in the 70s, or did you really mostly just want to be a star?
I wanted to write theatrical things, but actually, strangely enough, well, maybe it's not so strange when you look at it in context, but when I was around 17, 18, what I wanted to do more than anything else was write something for Broadway. I wanted to write a musical. I had no idea of how you did it or how musicals were constructed, but the idea of writing something that was rock-based for Broadway really intrigued me. I thought that would be a wonderful thing to do. And I saw myself as somebody who would kind of end up writing musicals, in a way. Probably rock musicals of some nature. But it never actually became that. So they were, in a way, those ideas were kind of quashed a little bit when I realised what a huge ambitious thing that was to take on, you know, because you have to write dialogue and all that. And I really didn't know how to approach that. So I took a far simpler course and kind of abbreviated the idea of musical into just a concept piece for an album, and created the characters to go with the different albums. And in the process of doing that, I found that I was actually playing around with the music that I was writing more and more. So it really was, it was character-driven that actually started to interfere with the music in a good way. And my interest eventually became just the music itself. So it's almost like I left a lot of the theatrical ambitions behind when I really got involved in the music itself.
I mean, Ziggy Stardust is a classic illustration, but so how much of Davy Jones was in Ziggy
I like Stiggy, personally.
Sticky Stardust.
In fact, that was going to be my next project, was Sticky Stardust.
Yeah.
Or was it Freddie Stardust? I don't really think there was, there was a guy in England just last week. He was in the papers. We have a comedian called Freddie Starr over in Britain. Freddie Starr's the guy who ate the hamster. I don't know if you remember the story. Freddie Starr eats hamster. That wasn't in the Times either. And this fella looked a lot like me, and so he went to a plastic surgeon to get his face changed, and now he looks like Freddie Starr. I just thought that was a really funny story. Where do we go from?
Well, come back to it. How much of Davy Jones was in Ziggy?
I don't think there was very much at all. I mean, I honestly, I was trying to create an idea of how to expand rock and expand the horizons of it. And I took as the alien form for Ziggy, as he was supposed to be an alien of some kind. I based him very much on a Japanese concept. At that particular time in the early 70s, we knew so little about Japan, and Japan really hadn't exploited itself and brought its stuff over to the West, so it still seemed like an alien society. But it was a human alien society, so you could make a human connection to Japan far more than you could say to Mars, which would be, just beyond.
And how easy was it to leave the character behind? You killed him off so emphatically.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I really didn't, because I really wanted to move on. In '73, we'd, incredible. The whole thing lasted only for 18 months in all, I think. I mean, it's just incredible. We did 1 year's worth of tours. We never even played Europe. We played England and the States. I should have killed my manager. We never played Europe, never played Australia. And it was over. It was just over. I decided, that's enough. I don't want to get, imprisoned by all this. And because I really wanted to, towards the last 2 or 3 months of the whole Ziggy tour, I'd already kind of decided what I wanted to do and what I wanted to write. So for me, it was just absolutely necessary to move on.
And what was behind the androgynous images of the 70s?
It just seemed so perfect within the time that really represented what the 70s was all about. There was such a feeling, coming out of the 50s and into the 60s, there was a real opening up of attitudes in the 60s. And then the 70s, everything became, it was the pluralistic 70s, There were so many sides to a story in the 70s. Before, in the 50s, it was just black and white. It was one story. yes and one story no. But in the 70s, you could look at things in so many different ways. Nothing was right. The idea of absolutes, it was kind of starting to disappear. It wasn't a, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And I just felt that it really summed up the whole of what the 70s were going to be about. It was a guess, and it was a good one.
But how much of that was you?
Oh, I think that definitely was me. I mean, I was, in my opinions and in my interests, I was extremely Catholic. I mean, there was nothing that didn't interest me. I had a burning curiosity. I still do have a burning curiosity for just about everything, except country and western, of course. But other than that, I really like to understand the society that I'm living in and how it works, how it functions, and what people are thinking, you know. You can't be a writer in any other way, I think. You have to sort of know where you are to write.
Does that how you see yourself mostly or primarily as a writer, firstly?
I think up until the last couple of years I would definitely have said yes, absolutely, completely. But I'm so surprised that I never really enjoyed performance very much. I mean, having the theatrical devices helped me get on stage and do them.
And that was a shyness?
Yeah, it was really. I never really felt like the natural performer, you know. I wasn't an outrageous person at heart. I was actually a very quiet little Capricorn boy, you know. And it seemed that I could get a kickstart to having to perform by, you know, working within the functions of characterization. This last 2 or 3 years, I've just thoroughly enjoyed the hell out of just singing the songs that I wrote for all those people. Myself, and just interpreting them myself. And I've got such a wonderful supportive band that I've had now for 8 years. It's just been great. So now, yeah, I'm a writer and I'm also a performer.
Well, looking at that quiet, shy little boy that you described, how did he handle the fame? I mean, the fame really came into focus with Ziggy Stardust and continued. It just got bigger.
I never, ever, at any time, really enjoyed the fame aspect of it. I mean, at the height of it all, I never used to go out. I hated going out. I wasn't a party guy. I never used to go to parties. I was really a recluse. I'd stay in all the time or creep out to clubs at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I became a night animal. I just didn't like the fame thing. The getting a table at a restaurant might have been nice if I'd eaten. But I never used to eat in those days.
You actually wrote, recorded the song Fame.
Yeah.
Lennon worked on that with you.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Tell me about that.
It came out of a conversation that we had. I said, you know, I hate this manager that I've got. What can I do about it? You know, how do I get a new manager? And he said, stop right there. No management. You don't need management. I mean, he was the first artist I'd ever met who told me that I didn't need management, that it was not necessary, you know. And bless him, forever after that, I did get rid of that manager, and I virtually managed myself my entire life. I've had business advisors and all that, but the idea of management has never crossed my path again since 77-ish.
But was that an exciting thing for you, to work with John Lennon?
75, rather. Hell, I mean, he was one of the major influences on my musical life. I mean, I just thought he was the very best of what could be done with rock and roll. And also ideas, how he was so... I mean, I felt such kin to him in as much as that he would rifle the avant-garde and look for ideas that were so on the outside, on the periphery of what was the mainstream, and then apply them in a functional manner to something that was considered populist and make it work. He would take the most odd idea and make it work for the masses. And I thought that was just so admirable. I mean, that was like making art work for the people and not sort of having it as an elitist, you know, thing. There was just so much about him that I admired. He was tremendous, you know.
Living in Los Angeles in the 70s has often been described as a lost or depressed period for you, if not dominated by cocaine, then certainly deeply affected by it.
Yeah.
What are your own standout memories of that time without inviting me?
There are no standout memories of Los Angeles.
Well, what's your perspective looking back?
Just again, function. You know, I guess, you know, a lot of it had to have been my trying to function behind what really was an extremely shy reclusive kind of personality that I had. And I kind of probably, like most people who get deeply involved in drugs, it was, I felt that it probably helped me break out of, my inhibitions, But of course it doesn't. It just throws you into a real quagmire of psychic and emotional hell, really. It just brings out, or creates awful traumas for you, But I had no idea of that, obviously.
What would you say? What would you say it cost you in personal terms?
Oh, it cost me a lot of years where I could have spent them in a very different way, and had a healthier and more fulfilling kind of... I mean, I think the work that I did during that period was surprisingly really good, I mean...
But what you don't know is what you might have been doing.
Yeah, yes, the thing is, so many people, especially, it's fashionable to say, well, you wouldn't have been able to write those things if you weren't on drugs and all that, and I just doubt that's really the truth at all, because I think some of the best things that I wrote at that period, I'd already cleaned up, and so I think that disproves that point.
I think when you're interviewed as much as you've been and quoted as much as you've been, it's perhaps a little unfair to bring back past quotes, particularly from that period. But I was...
Are we ever going to get to the present?
I was staggered when I read a quote from a Rolling Stones interview that you gave at the time saying, "I believe very strongly in fascism. We need a dictatorial right-wing tyranny." What was that about?
I think that was probably a bit coke-driven.
Yeah.
It was also part of... I fell into the trap of the black magic, Kabbalism, and the whole idea of just the Crowleyism of the times. It was a significant part of that middle point of the 70s, and I really got completely disoriented by all that. It was an awful, dreadful period for me. I mean, the only escape for me in the end was just to get up and clean myself out, and just finish my association with cocaine, which had become such a problem that I couldn't function in any other way from day to day. I wasn't eating, I couldn't eat anything. I mean, if you've seen photographs of me in that period, I mean, I weighed, 95 pounds or something. It was just dreadful. I'm absolutely amazed that I actually survived that period.
You did come through it, obviously, and you continued to produce groundbreaking music through the 70s.
We're only in the late 70s, and
I
think we've got to stop in a minute.
We're getting there. But it's commonly accepted that you lost your artistic thread in the 80s, and I've seen you describe it as your Phil Collins period. What happened there?
Poor old Phil. I tell you, that's the trouble when you become a symbol for something. And Phil, in this particular case, is somebody who really achieved an unknown kind of popularity with the mainstream at that particular time. So I'm just using you as a symbol, Phil. I mean, Let's Dance absolutely took me by complete surprise. I mean, I had no idea that I would ever achieve that kind of popularity in a mainstream kind of arena. And I just didn't know what to do with it. I suddenly doing tours, the like of which I'd never done before, playing stadiums, not clubs and theatres, and it was like...
Heady in its own way?
It was heady, but on the other hand, it was kind of scary, because I thought, what do I follow this up with, what do I do? And so I wrote 2 albums where I felt I really pandered to an audience, trying to meet the audience's expectations, what I believed they wanted, and I think they were artistically disastrous because of that. Looking at other artists, contemporaries, which I had to do to see if I was alone out there, I see I'm not the only one that made some blunders over a 35-year career.
Well, it'd be miraculous
but
if you
I
hadn't.
think I did okay that I only really made 2 albums that I really think were bad.
and the journey through the 90s to today.
Yeah.
The David Bowie of today is pretty straight in every way, I read recently, content with reality that you're no longer the trailblazer?
I hope that I'm somebody that other artists could look to as maybe someone who's learned how to ride the full curve of having some kind of longevity in their chosen profession, I'm still writing and producing the music that I've always wanted to. And I still have a very loyal audience. I don't think life could be better for me, and I think I'm a good example.
And legacy. How would you like your legacy written?
I'd love people to believe that I really had great haircuts.
No problem there.
Oh, yeah? I got the photos that prove otherwise.
And they're still hanging on a lot of walls, I think, around the world.
No, they're still hanging on a lot of heads as well.
Seriously.
Well, for good or better or worse, I think maybe the idea of opening up your possibilities. I mean, just speaking strictly in terms of music, I think being able to look to all kinds of music and being able to draw from all those kinds of music, to be able to cross